Hey guys, alright, well, figured it might be time to make another video on the Cybertruck, catch you guys up on the speed of things here. It's about, what, 5 months in, about 2,500-ish miles, now that's on the truck. You know, a lot of things has happened since the last time I made a video. Want to update you guys on sort of my thoughts, further thoughts about the ownership. But probably the biggest thing that has happened since is the availability of full self-driving. So I've actually used it once already, and it felt pretty good, but I wanted to do this one on a longer trip here between getting home from work, which is about a 10-mile trip. The first time I used it, which maybe it was a couple days after it was released, it did pretty well, but you know, I only activated it for a couple blocks, didn't have that much time. So this is actually probably the first real test that I'm going to be using that full self-driving for. So anyway, let's get started, and we'll see how many times I may have to intervene to make the trip home. So what further thoughts do I have? Still absolutely love the truck. The ownership of it, I mean, still very happy overall. Everybody in the family still loves this thing. We wanted to take a long road trip out, which we still haven't found the time to do so, but I don't think it will perform with any negative aspects to it. I mean, it's got so much space to carry stuff. Now, I will say one thing about the bed of it, and that is, of course, as everybody has mentioned before, the design of the truck bed has, because of that slope, it is hard to reach over to grab something that's kind of moved itself up towards the bulkhead of the back seats. So, okay, I'm not sure. Oh, you know what? I accidentally hit the brakes, so it kicked out of autopilot. That's my own fault because, well, I kind of forgot I was in autopilot for a second there, and I'm used to just hitting the brakes at that stop sign. All right, so it's got a very tight spot here. I hope it doesn't try to maneuver through it. Yeah, it's gonna wait, so that's good. Anyway, so yeah, that's still a bit of an issue. I bought the cargo bed divider. That does have to go back to the service center to get adjusted, because when there's a latch that you push down and it sticks out two prongs into the circle rings on the side of the bed trucks to kind of lock it in place, but the elevation of it has an issue where it doesn't allow it to lock in place. So not a big deal. It's just going to be one service visit, so you know, it'll get taken care of. But yeah, here we are using the FSD, and you know, it's such a game changer. I think people don't really realize how great of a system that it is. It still has its flaws, but I think it's just something nice to have, even on a short trip home or a long trip somewhere. And so far from what I've used, and again, this is between this time and the previous, which is a short trip, there really hasn't been any interactions. In other words, it hasn't buzzed me to put my hands on the steering wheel to alert that it's feeling my presence or my attention, whether it's my eyes moving around or what. But it's you know, right now you're witnessing in real time my second time doing a long trip or a semi-long trip with the software. So as far as some of the things that's happened with the Cybertruck in the news as of today, or that I'm making the video, but it's happened already for probably the last couple days, the announcement of the non-Foundation series cars are now being eligible for ordering. And you know, it goes back to, I guess, the price points and how people feel about that. I think for mine, which is the dual motor, I paid 99,000-ish and change, I think, for the whole package that it came with, which obviously is a truck. It's got the floor mats that came with it, the subscription service for the internet service, full self-driving software. It's got the $2,500 voucher towards the Tesla shop. There's a tray holder that goes in the center console that came with it as well, and the sunshade. So, you know, and then you get the sort of exclusivity of having your truck earlier, and you know, that to me wasn't so much a draw, because I wasn't trying to be you know, an influencer or anybody like that. It was just, I love cars, and you know, sometimes you want to own the latest and greatest, and this qualifies for that. So I was willing to make that purchase then. Now, with what you can get now with a non-foundation series, there are some changes. You don't get any of the stuff that I mentioned. You know, there are some slight changes, which really isn't a big deal to me, but I don't know how some people feel. For example, the white interior now is no longer standard. It's that dark gray. I don't particularly like it. I like the white. I think it needs a little bit of brightness in here, so I think the white works really well. But anyway, the gray is a standard, and I think the white option is a $2,000 option. The wheels that came with this, you know, that's an option. I think that's like a $3,500 option. You don't get the Foundation Series badging, which is no big deal whatsoever. And I know the center sort of footwell area, which kind of doubles as a tray, if you will, or at least a spot you can park things. This is silver lined, and I think the updated non-Foundation Series cars are black. Again, cosmetic, not a big deal. But if in fact you wanted to add everything in that you know, you would have got with the Foundation Series car, I think the only difference is you're paying somewhere, someone did a calculation, this is off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly, but I think the only difference is you're paying maybe like $3 to $4 grand more just to have the earlier truck. And to me, you know what, that's really worth it. It's not a big deal to me. Not downplaying that $3,000 isn't money, it's still money, but you know, in the meantime, we got to enjoy the truck, and you know, what can I say? It's a great car, so I feel really good about it. Now, the one thing that I will say is a bit of a nuisance is the A-pillar. It's not that you get used to it per se, because when you're, depending on how, you know, you're driving or you're making a turn, sometimes in a regular car you don't have the structure here to obstruct your view. You know, you have the windshield that curves on a traditional car, and there's nothing there. The A-pillar is pretty much right here, whereas the A-pillar on this is all the way down towards the front of the car, so it does kind of obstruct the view a bit. I don't want to say you get used to it, because in some cases, actually in most cases, every time I'm driving and I'm making a turn where I have to kind of use that area to look for traffic, I always say to myself, man, I wish they didn't have to have that. You know, I don't know how they can redesign this car, considering that's part of the structure of it, to eliminate that sort of blind spot. But that's really the gripe of it. And you know, is that a big deal? Would that have been a killer as far as something that had made me, you know, change my mind about buying the car? No, not really. I think I still would have bought it anyway. You just have to be slightly more careful is all. As far as, you know, cleaning the car, I will say that is a bit of a nuisance. The process with that, I mean, I have it down pat now, but you know what, it's a give and take, because if you want to wash the car, you know, I have this mobile guy that comes and he sprays the foam soap on it, washes it, everything, and then he's done. But if you know anything about cleaning this car, that doesn't get rid of any of the fingerprints or some of the I don't know, the sap from trees and things of that nature. You know, ultimately you still have to use that stainless steel cleaner, which is that Barkeeper's, I think Barkeeper something, I forgot what it's called. So we use that right after the wash. We give the car a wipe down with that Barkeeper solution, but that kind of leaves some streaks that doesn't go away, which ultimately, to make it go away, we run after the Barkeeper's layer. We wipe the car down with just pure water and then just run a dry rag over it to dry it. Now, for me, that seems to give it the best finish. Ultimately, though, we did decide that we are going to wrap this matte black. So I think with the wrap on, you don't necessarily have to have all those steps in trying to keep the car clean. Now, this is almost, as far as the stainless steel goes, it's almost kind of like having a black car, because if you leave it the way it is, you know, after you wash it, like a black car, it looks great for maybe an hour or two, or if you don't drive the car, it might look great for a day or two, and then it starts getting dusty and it's no longer as fresh as when you first washed it. So that's kind of like how this is for the surface of the stainless steel. You know, it's nice for maybe that day that you wash the car. I don't know about most people who do have Cybertrucks, but you know, I've seen most of them parked outside just because of the size of it. So we park it outside, and what happens is, you know, the elements get to it. So ultimately it starts to get dirty again quite quick. You know, if you wash a typical car, the process is not that much different either, right? So if you have a typical car, you wash it at a gas station or something like that, you know, they'll foam wash it, dry it, and then you'll be on your way. The extra step of it is almost equivalent to a detail, where someone has to take a buffing machine out to buff out the scratches, things of that nature. So, you know, depending on how you like to keep your cars clean, you can either be more involved or not involved at all. The Cybertruck, because it is stainless steel, the fingerprints sometimes do bother people. They're a little more involved. So I'm definitely one of them. So I will go through with the Barkeeper's solution to get rid of, you know, fingerprints and things that stick on rather well. So anyway, we're still about 5 miles away. So far so good. It's been handling everything perfectly. You know, it hasn't once asked me to feel my hand on the steering wheel. You know, I don't normally glance around anyway. I'm usually paying attention, maybe because there's still a part of me that's always a little skeptical about what it might do in certain situations. So naturally, I'm always facing forward. So I'm not gonna really turn my head and purposely, you know, not be attentive and cause the full self-driving to kick out. One interesting thing though, I haven't crossed that line, but I read and heard that they give you 5 strikes on the full self-driving. I don't know what happens if you go beyond those strikes. I don't know if they suspend it a period of time or what. So I don't really want to find out either. Again, this is my second time, so you know, I haven't given any reason to earn my first strike. So I don't know. I'm curious if anybody has sort of changed their minds out there as to owning a Cybertruck. For those of you who are watching that do have a Cybertruck, I'm curious if over time you've had your opinions changed on ownership. If you know, you decided somehow the truck was no longer for you, or that you know, there are different alternatives you'd rather have, or if it was just a novelty item you wanted to own short term and experience and then get rid of. You know, I'd really like to hear your thoughts. So far still, you know, we intend to keep this thing as long as we can. I still think it is a lifestyle truck, and a lot of things that I thought should have been out by now haven't, and I'm not quite sure why. You know, it's a popular truck, right? If you were reading the headlines back in September, I think it was that, you know, the Cybertruck alone nearly outsold the three other alternatives together with the Chevy, the Lightning, and I'm not sure if it was with it the Rivian R1S. But anyway, the Cybertruck numbers for that month of September not outsold, but almost outsold all three combined. So I think that is to say that this is a very popular truck, and you would think that maybe more accessories will come out sooner. I know Tesla has released a couple additional things as a front cooler. Okay, so what happened there was the truck was driving itself, and it was approaching a yellow light. Hold on here. It was approaching a yellow light, and it realized it probably didn't have enough time. It seemed kind of undecided as to whether or not it wanted to cross the intersection. But I think it ultimately, you saw it just now, it decided to slam on the brakes itself, which is fine. I wanted to let the system do what it did to kind of experience what decision making it would have done. So it kicked out of full self-driving, and just now it was telling me to take over. I didn't. I basically let it conclude what decisions it wanted to do. It slammed on the brakes. It did not enter the intersection, but it kicked out of full self-driving. The address is still put in, so I'm going to activate the FSD again as the light turns green and see if it allows me to go back into FSD. I'm not sure that necessarily counted as a strike, but we'll find out. We're almost at a green light, so let's see how that works out. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we're back in FSD. So let's see how it finishes the ride home. Would I have penalized that? No. Again, you know, I don't think full self-driving is perfect yet, right? So you have to be forgiving in some of the decisions that it made. I would say again that I handled it quite well. That wasn't like trying to run a red light or anything. It wasn't doing anything unsafe. So the decision that it made back there was perfectly fine with me. So back to the whole accessory thing. I know Tesla came out with the rear little pop-up seats that you could put on the tailgate. It's got the tailgate shield. Okay, it's asking me to take over. Okay, so auto steer aborted error is what the message last wrote. It disappeared now, but something about auto steer aborted. I'm not sure what happened. The sun is shining directly at the camera. I don't know if that might have impeded its ability to stay in full self-driving, but that wasn't the error that I got. But I mean, I'm changing angles now because the road kind of curved, but we were there when you heard that alarm. The sun was shining directly in my eye, and I wonder too if that was kind of blinding the camera. So we'll activate it again, but that was a little strange because you know, if it wasn't the sun, then I'm not sure why the thing had just alerted and kicked me out of full self-driving, because the traffic was moving just fine. There was no speeding or anything of that nature. So a little surprising, but you guys are seeing it real time. So do you consider that a knock? Maybe, but again, this is still software that's not perfected. Now what I will say though is you know, we have the Model Y, and that one had full self-driving quite a while ago. Now I think our car is obviously hardware 3 because ours is probably the first generation of Model Ys that came out, and that one all day long you had to, you know, intervene with some of the decisions that it made, or it would, you know, on the same trip. And in fact, I'll make another video, but in the earlier days of full self-driving, going from home to office, you probably had to intervene, I mean, 5-6 times. This you know, is as you saw, maybe the second time. I'm going to engage full self-driving again. Here we go. Okay, so you know, in that respect, it's gotten better. And I also have to keep in mind too that, you know, this is full self-driving generation 1 of that software on the Cybertruck, which in itself is a new product of the market. It's a much bigger car. The dimensions are different. So it's not surprising to me that it'll be a little bit different when you first use it. But already it's still shown such an improvement over the Model Y. Just changed the lanes here. Got tired of being stuck behind that big sprinter van. But I would say we're probably about 75% to our destination. Now, I will probably run this test a few more times. You know, not disengaging, but sort of stopping before you enter an intersection on a yellow. I wouldn't peg it as something wrong with FSD or something of an error. I would say that it did its job. I just don't know why it kicked me out ultimately, because at the end of when it finally made that break, it said to take over, and it kicked out of autopilot. So, you know, I'm not. It did its job, and I think it probably should have kept itself in autopilot to finish the ride home, but it didn't. But again, I'm not gonna knock that one. I think I would have done the same thing anyway. But that second one where it just kind of disengaged, and it was just following the van in front of me for no reason, you know, kicking itself out. I'm wondering too if that really is the sun shining right into the camera and maybe blocking it. But if that was the case, I kind of wish that error message would have reflected as so. As we're driving here, let me just say that it's a very comfortable drive. It's not jerky by any means. I would say it's driving with the comfort of someone who's probably been behind the wheel for about 7-8 years, someone who already knows the etiquette of driving. It's not going super slow. You know, it's going with the flow of traffic just fine. When it comes to you know, whether it's a stop sign or a light, I'm not feeling like, you know, it's coming to an abrupt stop. It is smoothly coming to a stop. The acceleration is following in line with the car in front of me. Yeah, so okay, auto steer aborted for system error is what it said. Now, I just caught that. This is what just happened earlier when I was behind that van. I was telling you about the sun shining. I just noticed the sun was shining again, and that's when it occurred. It asked me to take over. So I do think that when sunlight is, I mean, it's just like anytime you're driving a car, if you're blinded by that direct sunlight, it's doing the same to the camera. So that's what's going on. At least between those two occurrences, that's what I think is happening. Okay, so that's up to Tesla to fix that issue. I don't know how they will, considering their camera-based system. So, you know, but I'll tell you what, props to the guys that are working on this, because full self-driving wasn't even a thing. Or, you know, it just 10 years ago you couldn't have imagined it. So, you know, here we are, and are we better with it or are we better without it? You know, I don't know. I think that's a big question. I think a lot of people would be divided on that. For myself, I think it's a good thing to have, because sometimes you might use it on a long road trip, or, you know, you're just tired, you don't want to drive. I think that would be a great feature. A lot of old people, for example, and I say this just as a reflection of what the future can be, but, you know, there's a lot of old people, and sometimes, at least where I live, you kind of have to look out for them, because they're not, okay, yeah, so the sunlight is hitting, and you can see that it's triggering these warnings. So again, I'm kicked out of full self-driving, same message. It's got to be the sun. I can't think of anything else. It's 3 times consistent, where you can probably see the sun shining right at my eye. But back to what I was saying, which is the full self-driving, you know, where I live, there's a lot of retired elder folk, and they don't drive as you would expect society to drive. You know, they drive slower, they're not as careful. There's been multiple times where I had to swerve out of the way so they don't hit me. But, you know, as they age, and there's a big population that's aging, I think full self-driving will help them get to appointments or errands that they have to run. Again, I'm speaking from a perspective that it can be perfected in the future, so that, you know, there's no human interventions needed at any time, that it can conclude a drive from point A to point B on its own. So that, I think, will be very helpful. I mean, I speak of that for my own parents, right? If they ever have a doctor's appointment and, you know, they're having a tough time to get there, yeah, you can argue that they could get Uber to get them to where they need to go. But I still think that at least having full self-driving will allow them to accomplish that that travel. So that's something I can see being a good thing. Where it may be argued that it's a bad thing, I mean, it would be the industry as a whole, right? So taxis, you know, that if it really became so efficient and it works 100% of the time without error, then you're talking about a situation where there's going to be a lot of taxi drivers looking for new jobs, delivery couriers, things of that nature. So, you know, that's many years ahead, but it's an issue that nevertheless I think humankind will have to face. Anyway, so we're home now. You guys saw in real time how many errors it's caught. Now it's telling me front camera can't see well. Front camera blocked or blinded. There you go. Okay. So I do think it's definitely the direct sunlight that's causing it to kick out of full self-driving. And you know what? If you as a human are having a tough time seeing, I'm not sure I want the camera, if it's blinded, to try to make decisions. I personally would feel better making decisions myself at that point. So can full self-driving operate without or with the sunlight hitting the camera directly? I don't know. I mean, if you're a human and you have trouble looking at, you know, your peripheral vision with the sun shining, you just put on some sunshades. So, you know, is there a way to build these cameras where there may be a slight tint to them, kind of having a sunshade effect, so that, you know, the cameras can still see without the sun, with the sun still directly shining at it? I don't know. That's up for Tesla to figure out. But so far so good. Again, this is just the first iteration of the full self-driving software on this truck, and I don't think it's going to be perfect, or you shouldn't expect it to be perfect on the first go. But it is impressive that it can drive a truck this big and get you home in relative comfort. So kudos to the Tesla team. Yeah, we'll see what happens in the next couple thousand miles, but so far so good, guys. All right, see you later.